Chapter 6 of Fanny Herself. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Fanny Herself by Edna Ferber. Chapter 6. Theodore came home at 12 o'clock that night. He had gone to Bauer's studio party after all. It was the first time he had deliberately disobeyed his mother in a really big thing. Mrs. Brandeis and Fanny had nibbled fudge all evening, it had turned out deliciously velvety, and had gone to bed at their usual time. At 10:30 Mrs. Brandeis had wakened with the instinctive feeling that Theodore was not in the house. She lay there, wide awake, staring into the darkness until 11. Then she got up and went into his room, though she knew he was not there. She was not worried as to his whereabouts or his well-being. That same instinctive feeling told her where he was. She was very angry, and a little terrified at the significance of his act. She went back to bed again, and she felt the blood pounding in her head. Molly Brandeis had a temper, and it was surging now, and beating against the barriers of her self-control. She told herself as she lay there that she must deal with him coolly and firmly, though she wanted to spank him. The time for spankings was past. Someone was coming down the street with a quick, light step. She sat up in bed, listening. The steps passed the house, went on. A half-hour passed. Someone turned the corner, whistling blithely. But no, he would not be whistling, she told herself. He would sneak in, quietly. It was a little after 12 when she heard the front door open. Winnebago rarely locked its doors. She was surprised to feel her heart beating rapidly. He was trying to be quiet, and was making a great deal of noise about it. His shoes and the squeaky fifth stair alone would have convicted him. The imp of perversity in Molly Brandeis made her smile, angry as she was, at the thought of how furious he must be at that stair. "Theodore," she called quietly, as he was tiptoeing past her room. "Yeah?" "Come in here, and turn on the light." He switched on the light and stood there in the doorway. Molly Brandeis, sitting up in bed in the chilly room, with her covers about her, was conscious of a little sick feeling, not at what he had done, but that a son of hers should ever wear the sullen, defiant, hangdog look that disfigured Theodore's face now. "Bauer's?" A pause. "Yes. Why?" "I just stopped in there for a minute after the concert. I didn't mean to stay. And then Bauer introduced me around to everybody. And then they asked me to play, and you played badly." "Well, I didn't have my own violin." "No football game Saturday, and no pocket money this week. Go to bed." He went, breathing hard, and muttering a little under his breath. At breakfast next morning Fanny plied him with questions and was furious at his cool uncommunicativeness. "Was it wonderful, Theodore? Did he play, oh, like an angel?" "Played all right, except the swan thing. Maybe he thought it was too easy or something, but I thought he murdered it. Pass the toast, unless you want it all." It was not until the following autumn that Theodore went to New York. The thing that had seemed so impossible was arranged. He was to live in Brooklyn with a distant cousin of Ferdinand Brandeis, on a business basis, and he was to come into New York 3 times a week for his lessons. Mrs. Brandeis took him as far as Chicago, treated him to an extravagant dinner, put him on the train, and with difficulty stifled the impulse to tell all the other passengers in the car to look after her Theodore. He looked incredibly grown up and at ease in his new suit and the hat that they had wisely bought in Chicago. She did not cry at all in the train, and she kissed him only twice, and no man can ask more than that of any mother. Molly Brandeis went back to Winnebago and the store with her shoulders a little more consciously squared, her jaw a little more firmly set. There was something almost terrible about her concentrativeness. Together she and Fanny began a life of self-denial of which only a woman could be capable. They saved in ways that only a woman's mind could devise, petty ways, that included cream and ice and clothes and candy. It was rather fun at first. When that wore off it had become a habit. Mrs. Brandeis made 2 resolutions regarding Fanny. One was that she should have at least a high school education and graduate. The other, that she should help in the business of the store as little as possible. To the first Fanny acceded gladly. To the second she objected. "But why? If you can work, why can't I? I could help you a lot on Saturdays and at Christmas time and after school." "I don't want you to," Mrs. Brandeis had replied, almost fiercely. "I'm giving my life to it. That's enough. I don't want you to know about buying and selling. I don't want you to know a bill of lading from a sales slip when you see it. I don't want you to know whether FOB is a wireless signal or a branch of the Masons." At which Fanny grinned. No one appreciated her mother's humor more than she. "But I do know already. The other day when that fat man was selling you those go-karts I heard him say FOB Buffalo, and I asked Aloysius what it meant, and he told me." It was inevitable that Fanny Brandeis should come to know these things, for the little household revolved about the store on Elm Street. By the time she was 18 and had graduated from the Winnebago High School, she knew so many things that the average girl of 18 did not know, and was ignorant of so many things that the average girl of 18 did know, that Winnebago was almost justified in thinking her queer. She had a joyous time at school, in spite of algebra and geometry and physics. She took the part of the heroine in the senior class play given at the Winnebago Opera House, and at the last rehearsal electrified those present by announcing that if Albert Finkbein, who played the dashing Southern hero, didn't kiss her properly when the curtain went down on the first act, just as he was going into battle, she'd rather he didn't kiss her at all. "He just makes it ridiculous," she protested. "He sort of gives a peck 2 inches from my nose and then giggles. Everybody will laugh, and it'll spoil everything." With the rather startled elocution teacher backing her, she rehearsed the bashful Albert in that kiss until she had received the effect of realism that she thought the scene demanded. But when, on the school sleighing parties and hay rides, the boy next to her slipped a wooden and uncertain arm about her waist while they were all singing Jingle Bells, and Good Night, Ladies, and Merrily We Roll Along, she sat up stiffly and unyieldingly until the arm, discouraged, withdrew to its normal position. Which 2 instances are quoted as being a piece with what Winnebago termed her queerness. Not that Fanny Brandeis went beauless through school. On the contrary, she always had someone to carry her books, and to take her to school parties and home from the Friday night debating society meetings. Her first love affair turned out disastrously. She was 12, and she chose as the object of her affections a bullet-headed boy named Simpson. One morning, as the last bell rang and they were taking their seats, Fanny passed his desk and gave his coarse and stubby hair a tweak. It was really a love tweak, and intended to be playful, but she probably put more fervor into it than she knew. It brought the tears of pain to his eyes, and he turned and called her that name, at which she shrank back, horrified. Her shock and unbelief must have been stamped on her face, for the boy, still smarting, had snarled, "Yes, I mean it." It was strange how she remembered that incident years after she had forgotten important happenings in her life. Clarence Hale, whose very existence you will have failed to remember, used to hover about her uncertainly, always looking as if he would like to walk home with her, but never summoning the courage to do it. They were graduated from the grammar school together, and Clarence solemnly read a graduation essay entitled, "Where is the Horse?" Automobiles were just beginning to flash plentifully up and down Elm Street. Clarence had always been what Winnebago termed sickly, in spite of his mother's noodle soup, and coddling. He was sent west, to Colorado, or to a ranch in Wyoming, Fanny was not quite sure which, perhaps because she was not interested. He had come over one afternoon to bid her good-bye, and had dangled about the front porch until she went into the house and shut the door. When she was 16 there was a blond German boy whose taciturnity attracted her volubility and vivacity. She mistook his stolidness for depth, and it was a long time before she realized that his silence was not due to the weight of his thoughts, but to the fact that he had nothing to say. In her last year at high school she found herself singled out for the attentions of Harmon Kent, who was the Beau Nash of the Winnebago High School. His clothes were made by Schwartze, the tailor, when all the other boys of his age got theirs at the spring and fall sales of the Golden Eagle clothing store. It was always nip and tuck between his semester standings and his track team and football possibilities. The faculty refused to allow flunkers to take part in athletics. He was one of those boys who have definite charm, and manner, and poise at 17, who crib their exams off their cuffs. He was always at the head of any social plans in the school, and at the dances he rushed about wearing in his coat lapel a ribbon marked floor committee. The teachers all knew he was a bluff, but his engaging manner carried him through. When he went away to the State University he made Fanny solemnly promise to write, to come down to Madison for the football games, to be sure to remember about the junior prom. He wrote once, a badly spelled scrawl, and she answered. But he was the sort of person who must be present to be felt. He could not project his personality. When he came home for the Christmas holidays, Fanny was helping in the store.